In 1920, a British colonial officer walked into a dense forest on the Kenyan coast. He was not looking for anything in particular. He was following a path that the local people never used. And there, inside the trees, he found a city. Not ruins of a small settlement. A city. A palace. 3 mosques. Dozens of stone houses with walls still standing. Streets laid out at right angles. And inside one of the buildings, a toilet. A flushing toilet. In a city that had been abandoned for 300 years. In a forest that the local people living beside it had refused to enter for generations. When the archaeologist asked the Giriama people, who had lived around this forest for centuries, why they never went inside, they gave him an answer he did not expect. They said, "The old ones are in there, and the old ones do not want visitors." July 29, 2024. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, declared the site a World Heritage Site, the 8th in Kenya. The announcement was made in New Delhi. It described the site as having outstanding universal value. It praised the preservation of the ruins. It noted the city's remarkable architecture, and in the official documentation, in the academic citations and heritage assessments of the world's most respected cultural body, there is a line that stops most readers. The city of Gedi does not appear in any written record from the period when it was alive. Not in Portuguese chronicles, not in Arab merchant documents, not in Swahili oral records, not in Chinese trade logs. A city of 2,500 people trading with China, India, Venice, and Spain does not appear once in the written record of any civilization it traded with. The Portuguese were 15 kilometers away for nearly 100 years. They documented everything on the East African coast. They wrote about every port, every village, every trade route, every chief they encountered from Somalia to Mozambique. They never wrote a single word about Gedi. To this day, no one knows why. The city was called Gedi. In the Oromo language, the language of a people who once passed through this region, the word means precious. It was built sometime in the 12th century, on a piece of land 5 kilometers inland from the Indian Ocean. This was the first strange thing about it. Swahili trading cities were built on the coast. They needed access to the sea. They needed ports. Gedi had neither. It sat deep inside a forest, away from the water, away from the trade routes that fed every other city on this coastline. And yet, the things found inside its walls came from the furthest reaches of the known world. A Chinese Ming Dynasty vase, Venetian glass, a lamp from India, scissors from Spain. The city had streets, running water fed by large tanks, drainage gutters. Inside each house, there was a special strong room, accessed only through a trapdoor. A safe. When archaeologists finally opened those rooms in the 1940s and 1950s, every single one was empty. Not looted, not forced open. Emptied, carefully, by the people who lived there. The city was built twice. In the 15th century, after its first occupation, someone constructed new outer walls. Bigger, more elaborate. The population grew, the trade expanded. And then, around the year 1500, everyone left. No one knows why. A generation or two passed. People returned. The city was rebuilt. The walls were repaired. New houses went up among the old ones. And then, in the early 17th century, everyone left again, for the last time. No bodies were found, no evidence of fire, no broken walls from battle, no mass graves from disease. They simply left, and the forest grew over everything. When the Giriama people arrived in this region, fleeing invasions from the north, they found the forest, and inside it, they sensed the city. They did not go in. For generations, no one can say how many, the Giriama community built their lives around the forest but not inside it. They farmed near it. They walked along its edges. They knew it was there. And they believed, with a certainty they did not explain so much as simply live with, that the old ones were inside. The spirits of the city's priests, guardians of whatever had been left behind. In 1884, a British resident of Zanzibar named Sir John Kirk was the first outsider to document the ruins. He wrote about them briefly. He did not excavate them. He moved on. For 40 years, the ruins were noted but not studied. In the 1920s, serious colonial attention arrived, and what the archaeologists found confounded them. The city had not been destroyed. It had been designed. Every measurement, every doorway, every wall was deliberate. The streets met at right angles, a level of urban planning associated with far older and far more famous civilizations. The two outer walls that surrounded the city were concentric, one inside the other, with only 4 entrances, each aligned to one of the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. James Kirkman, the British archaeologist who conducted the most extensive early excavations between 1948 and 1958, concluded that the city had been inhabited from at least the 12th century. He found the objects from China and India. He confirmed the advanced sanitation, and he confronted the same question that every researcher since has confronted. Why is there no record of this place? Kirkman could not answer it. The Portuguese paradox was the part that troubled him most. When the Portuguese arrived at Malindi in 1505, they were 15 kilometers from Gedi. At the time, Gedi was almost certainly occupied, at or approaching the peak of its prosperity. The Portuguese stayed in Malindi for over a century. They were meticulous record keepers. They mapped the coastline. They noted every settlement. They described the Swahili people, their customs, their trade routes, their leaders. And in all of those records, Gedi does not appear once. There are 2 possible explanations. The first, the Portuguese knew about Gedi and deliberately did not write about it. The second, somehow, a city of 2,500 people who were trading with China and India managed to be entirely invisible to the most powerful colonial force on the East African coast. Neither explanation is satisfying. Both are documented facts. The theories for why Gedi was abandoned have evolved over the decades. The first theory, proposed early in the 20th century, was invasion. A group called the Zimba, a militant people who swept down the East African coast in the late 16th century, destroyed several Swahili cities, but there is no evidence of violence at Gedi. The walls are intact, no weapons were found, no bodies. If the Zimba came to Gedi, they left no mark. The second theory is drought. All of Gedi's wells had been deepened over time. Someone kept going deeper in search of water. A city without enough water would have reason to leave, but it would not explain the first abandonment, around 1500, before the wells were depleted, and it would not explain why people came back, rebuilt, and then left again. The third theory is the one that a Kenyan-American paleontologist named Chapuruka Kusimba is currently investigating, with funding from National Geographic: the Black Death, the bubonic plague. The same epidemic that killed a third of Europe in the 14th century also moved along trade routes. Kusimba has suggested that Gedi's population may have been a victim, but plague leaves evidence. Plague means bodies, and Gedi has no bodies. In 2024, the same year UNESCO declared Gedi a World Heritage Site, there were no new answers. The mystery of Gedi is the same mystery it was 100 years ago, slightly better documented, still completely unexplained. There is a part of the Gedi story that academic papers mention briefly and then move on from: the Giriama people. For centuries, the Giriama lived beside the forest where Gedi lay hidden. They did not go in, not because they were afraid of the ruins themselves, but because they believed the ruins were occupied by the old ones, the spirits of the city's ancient priests. This belief was not a legend from a distant past. It was operational. When researchers arrived in the early 20th century to study the site, the Giriama explained their relationship to it clearly. They came to the edges of the forest to pray, for rain, for harvests, for healing. They addressed the old ones directly, and then they left without entering. The guide who leads visitors through the ruins today is a Giriama man. His name is Mambo. A journalist who visited the site wrote about what he told her. She felt watched, she said. The air felt different inside the ruins. She mentioned this to Mambo. He said, "Even if you are alone, you are not alone." She asked what he meant. He said, "You can only come here when you are invited by them. It is necessary to show respect, or they can curse you." She asked if that had happened. He said, "It has happened." In 2001, a book published in the United States included a chapter titled Curse of the Old Ones. It documented several instances of visitors to Gedi who removed objects from the ruins, and the things that followed. The details differ. The pattern does not. Whether one believes in the old ones or not, the Giriama people, who have lived beside this place for centuries, have maintained a relationship with it that European science has never fully understood. And in some fundamental sense, the ruins of Gedi have remained intact, while every other Swahili city on this coast was looted, repurposed, or built over, because of the people who never went inside. In 2024, Gedi was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The announcement described it as a testament to the advanced civilization of the medieval Swahili coast. It noted the remarkable state of preservation. It praised the cultural significance. What it did not resolve: who were the people of Gedi? Where did they go? Why did they leave twice? Why does no written record mention them? A small community lives near the ruins today. The forest has been partially cleared. Tourists come. Guides walk them through the palace, the mosques, the houses with their empty strong rooms. In the afternoon, when the light falls through the forest canopy and the old coral walls turn amber, visitors report the same thing that the journalist reported: the feeling of being watched, the sense that the air holds something. Mambo the guide says the old ones are still there. He says they are not hostile. Not always. He says they have accepted the tourists, the researchers, the archaeologists. But he notes, quietly, without drama, that the site's best protector was never a fence, or a government decree, or a UNESCO inscription. It was the belief of the Giriama people, who lived beside a mystery for centuries and understood, on some level we do not have words for, that it was not theirs to enter. The strongest room in every house in Gedi, the room with the trapdoor, was called the strong room. It was where the family kept everything of value, and when the people left, they took everything with them. Every single strong room, in every single house, was empty when archaeologists opened them, which means the people of Gedi knew they were leaving. They had time to pack, they made a decision, and they walked into the forest, 2,500 people, with everything they owned, and no one, in any language, in any document, in any chronicle, wrote down where they went.